What's up, NBA fan? What's up, all sports fans? This your boy JB, host of the Behind the Bench podcast, network, and channel. Giving a shout out to the rest of the crew: Shad, Kelvin, Jermaine, KB Film Room, Big Dog, Talk Sports. That's right, that's right. And for everyone who's tuning in, this is going to be a blockbuster. We thank you for supporting Behind the Bench and subscribing to the channel and helping to make this show the best that it can be. And we're trying to improve day by day, video by video, and providing sports content at the highest level possible. Now, toodaloo. Oh, man. You got to kind of laugh, man. Not laughing in a mocking way, but in an absolute way. And wow, man. Now, I think the people or sports fans, basketball fans who support this channel, I would like to think that they realize that I'm a fan of the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, I love the NBA as a whole. And there have been a lot of players who did not represent the Lakers who I enjoy watching play throughout the years. But in these 6 years, as I've been saying time and time again, the most disrespected, disregarded, underappreciated, and in the grand scheme of things, given the impression they were the least important when they were the most important, thinking they were the least vital, but in all actuality, they were the most vital. And there will come a day that those young men that were casted out of their home will get their recognition. And that's going to be a beautiful moment. It's going to provide a redemptive quality for this story franchise. And I'm not trying to be melodramatic. I'm not trying to sound corny. But those young men, the original young core of the Los Angeles Lakers from 2014 to 2018, they gave us 150% on the court. It's a lot to ask players to represent your franchise and to play hard, with no holding back. It's hard to convince players to do that or to motivate players to do that when your franchise is starting all over again. See, it's easy to do that when, you may be one piece away and a player may say, okay, I can help take that team over the top. I'm not saying that's not a challenge, but the framework of which you're willing to represent a team, the degree in which you're willing to do that, it's easier to do that when you're one piece away than when you're starting all over again. And that's why, before I really delve into this, when Kobe Bean Bryant, the late Kobe Bean Bryant, the Mamba, who represented this franchise and played for this franchise for 20 years, his entire career, we're talking, we may well say 2 decades. Well, 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s. So technically, he played 3 decades for the franchise. At some point, And when he played his last game, and when the young core who was presently playing alongside him at the time, the Julius Randles, the Jordan Clarksons, the Larry Nance Jr.'s, even D'Angelo Russell. But mainly the first three I mentioned, Randle, Clarkson, Nance Jr. Think about this. They shared that moment with Kobe Bryant playing his last game for the Los Angeles Lakers and for the NBA as a whole. They shared that moment with him. And I believe that playing with those young men motivated and led Kobe Bryant to give his last words as far as an active player in the NBA, when he say, more than the championship years, I'm more proud of the down years because we didn't run. So when we start winning those championships again, we did it the right way. See, I cannot think of another superstar who was asked to represent a franchise after being successful and asked to represent a franchise starting all over again. I can't think of one. I cannot think of one. Now, when you think of Michael Jordan lifted the Chicago Bulls from the ground up to become champions. So when you a player like Michael Jordan who went through the fire like that, that's why he fought so hard for Scottie Pippen when there were talks that, management was looking to trade Scottie Pippen. Jordan said, no, we went through the battles together. He understood that. Like, no, I'm not going to support him being traded for someone who's maybe supposedly better because we went through the wars. See, that means something. And he said he would never play for another coach. See, Michael Jordan was as true as they come when it comes to, approaching his craft as a professional athlete, as a professional basketball player. So Kobe followed that example. So when he retired, it was like Kobe Bryant symbolized the last remaining remnant of what made the NBA great in terms of what we expected superstars to be and how they represent a team, leading a team against the odds. No matter what. Sure, you may be frustrated because you may not feel that your teammates cannot answer the call, but you still persevere. So that's one of the main reasons Kobe Bryant had 2 jerseys retired. The 2 numbers that he wore, number 8 and number 24. He essentially played half his career in number 8, just about, and then the second half of his career wearing number 24. And he got both jerseys retired because he represented the franchise when we were down. We were starting all over again. So in essence, he was passing the torch to the new era of Laker basketball. That's what that young core represented. So 6 years from July 1st, 2018 till now, in the grand scheme of things, we were led to believe that young players were expendable and that they should only be looked at as pawns in the game, as assets. To trade off, wave, to create cap space, to flip around, to bring in superstars. And when that, how can I say that? When the process started of eliminating that young talent, a voice kept on speaking to me, a voice in my mind and in my heart was telling me, no, this ain't the right move. No, this ain't right to begin with. There's nothing about this that and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. There's nothing about this that's legit or kosher. You know what I'm saying? It had foul written all over it. So I said this is going to be the greatest trade-off we've ever seen in the history of professional basketball. And what led me to that conclusion was, number one, the heart speaking to you. Number two, recognizing collectively how great that young core was and how they were ahead of this time. And ultimately how they had to take a hit and take the sacrifice for other young cores of other teams not to be subjected to the same treatment. They had to take that hit because they were brought forth during an era of player empowerment. Right dead smack in the heart of this player empowerment, a la Super Team era. Not knowing, when I mean not knowing, I'm particularly speaking of fans in general, prognosticators, talking heads, so-called experts of basketball. Not knowing that this franchise was 5 years ahead of the curve. And when the impression was given, when they had that 1 year of success in 2020, it was like a mirage. Oh man, we can eschew young talent and go the shortcut route, the all-time shortcut route, and we can rack off a string of championships. A string. When you think like that, you wind up finding yourself behind the 8 ball and fast. So in 2020, when they celebrated that so-called victory, at that moment, they fell behind the rest of the league. Because when they started to eliminate their young core and traded a number of them to acquire Anthony Davis, remember the conversation right after that trade was made? Normally, when you pursue a star like that, a superstar, that player is supposed to represent the final piece. But when the Lakers acquired Anthony Davis, they still needed more to field the team. Because the goal was to form a super team and to bring in 2 superstars to play alongside their dude. Or that guy. Everybody knew who I'm talking about. And they were scrambling to field the team. And when the main goal was not achieved, then they went the alternate route. And they brought in a round of veteran-laden players. Many players were on the other side of 30 years old. So therefore, there's so much pressure put on you to cash in because essentially you started operating backwards. And that's been the MO since that 1 year where they've been trying to play catch up since. Because think about it. They say the Lakers have 2 top 10 players, right? So you would think with 2 top 10 players, you should at least be able to win 50 games. And since all this started, they've only been able to win 50 games one season, And that's the season where everything was mortgaged off to pursue that one championship. No matter what. So when they was led to take this route, they've been operating backwards since. So what I'm trying to say is, outside of that 1 year when they relied on primarily all veterans, well, those veterans start to age fast after that year. And every roster overhaul that they've conducted since then, the players that they brought in, individually, collectively, have not been able to outperform the original young core. That's been a missing ingredient for these past, well, officially the past 4 years. But the process began 6 years ago, when the direction of the team changed overnight from we got this tremendous future to we have to win right now. So the void, you can literally see the void play out. You can see it. Okay, check this out. Look at this tweet right here this is a prominent figure who covers the Lakers, right? And what does he say 6 years after the fact? When a lot of people were led to believe that you didn't need young talent. Well, fast forward to 2024. And what does he say? I really like the philosophical shift that hiring Dan Hurley would represent for the Lakers. Understanding that the CBA makes it difficult to keep a top-tier team together, sustained success will require, boom, a pipeline of young talent coming in that has to be prioritized and developed. Case closed. I'm gonna read that one more time. This was said recently, within the past day or two. I really like the philosophical shift that hiring Dan Hurley will represent for the Lakers, since they're looking to hire a new coach. Understanding that the CBA makes it difficult to keep a top-tier team together, meaning top-heavy, 3 superstars. Sustained success will require a pipeline of young talent coming in that has to be prioritized and developed. So, the way that the league is evolving with this new CBA that it kicked in, that will penalize teams for trying to essentially shortcut their way to a championship by adopting the super team format through the guise of what they call player empowerment, it's going to be practically impossible to do that and not penalize your franchise for years down the road. We're already seeing it. Not just by one, it's a number of teams out there that's going to feel the bite of taking this route 4 or 5 years ago as we move forward to the second half of this decade coming up in the NBA. So everything he said was true, and that proves that, yes, superstars help you. How can I say this? Historically, yes, you need a superstar. But it's the means of which you acquire one that should be called to question. If you have to mortgage your future off, essentially a decade to acquire a superstar, well, that's not a move you should be making. If you acquire a superstar as like a final piece to the puzzle, well, that's the final piece to the puzzle. Nothing wrong with that. We've seen countless examples where teams have done that. But what's most important moving forward that the Lakers find themselves in flux because of? Young talent is more of a prerequisite to long-term success than it is pursuing one superstar. See, the course of the NBA was thrown off its axis over the past 15 years, when essentially the system was manipulated for superstars to join forces, mainly through free agency. The purpose of free agency when it was brought forth in professional sports, it really wasn't about going to a different team. It was about being allowed to maximize your earnings as a professional athlete. Because back then, a lot of players were playing at, historical levels, playing above expectation, but they weren't being compensated accordingly. That's why free agency was brought forth. Now, a player can pose a threat of leaving if they don't get paid accordingly, but it was really about maximizing your earnings. Okay. So over the past 15 years, because of superstars, prominent superstars manipulating the system to stack the deck, well, to stack the deck and to take a shortcut, the players who were vulnerable and exploited to achieve their goal was young talent. We saw it happen in 2009, 2010. We saw it happen in 2014. And we saw it happen by the droves in 2018. Where an entire drafted roster was eliminated from a franchise. Never seen before in pro sports, in any team, any professional sports league, team sport. NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL. Never seen it before until we start seeing it with the Los Angeles Lakers. That's the cold hard facts. And they've made every move possible over these past 4 years. They went pseudo young. They brought in big names, veterans, centers, rim protectors, shot blockers, three-point shooters, wings, defenders, backup point guards, and they still cannot replace their young core. Okay. They supposedly acquired young talent over the past season, right? Rui Hachimura, Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley was initially included in that mid-season trade last year, but they let him go and he signed with Milwaukee. In this offseason, they brought in Jackson Hayes. They brought in Gabe Vincent. They brought in Cam Reddish. They brought in Christian Wood. But if you take them like player for player and you compare them to the original young core, they don't measure up. That's the problem going on with the Lakers. Okay, so essentially, let's look at it like this. Even when the Lakers brought in Montrezl Harrell, who was the reigning sixth man of the year, right? Montrezl Harrell. They brought him in. And then they brought in the runner-up to the sixth man of the year, and Dennis Schroeder. But check this out. His 1 year with the Lakers, Montrezl Harrell did not average what Jordan Clarkson was averaging his last year on the team before he was traded. Dennis Schroeder, in his 2 years with the Lakers, did not average what Kyle Kuzma was averaging before all this started. So the young core, Jordan Clarkson and Kyle Kuzma, outperformed Montrezl Harrell, Dennis Schroeder, and any player who they brought here to play the 6-man, 7-man role. Okay. Rui Hachimura I consider him a small forward rather than a four. He's not better than. Okay, I'll put it this way. You match him up against Brandon Ingram. Is he better than Brandon Ingram? Jared Vanderbilt playing the power forward position. Is Jared Vanderbilt better than Julius Randle? Gabe Vincent is like, they brought him in to be like a backup point guard, right? Okay, is Julius Randle better than Lonzo Ball? Before Lonzo Ball got hurt. I'm just talking about talent-wise. And hopefully Lonzo Ball can return back. I think they finally figured out what was going on with his knee. Has any big man, I'm not talking about career-wise, but I'm talking about the tenure with the Lakers. Has any big man outperformed game by game Ivica Zubac? Ivica Zubac was averaging 19 per 36 minutes before he was traded to the Clippers. He was averaging 19 points, 11 rebounds, and like 2.5 blocks a game. Playing starters minutes per 36. There hasn't been one center, not even Dwight Howard. I'm not talking about career-wise. I'm talking about Laker tenure. When Dwight Howard was signed in 2019, going to the 2020 season, he started, but he was averaging like 17, 18 minutes a game because he could no longer play starters minutes. Zubac, when the Clippers use him right, even when, okay, let's say when they don't use him right, he's still giving about 20, 25, 26 minutes a game. When they feature him in the offense for that particular game, he's playing 34, 35 minutes. So the players that they bringing up in here are not outperforming the real young core. And that's the fly that continues to hang on the wall. And that led recently Laker legend, often considered a Mount Rushmore player, often considered the greatest point guard in history of the game, Magic Johnson, to utter this plea. Laker Nation, we have a problem. See, if everything was going to plan, they wouldn't have to say we have a problem. All the good teams in the West are young and talented. The Nuggets, Timberwolves, the Thunder, and the Mavs, and the biggest elephant in the room is the Spurs, who with Victor Wembanyama will definitely be a playoff team next season. For the Lakers to compete with all these teams, the roster must improve. Now think about it. They say the Lakers are the only team in the Western Conference who have two players that's top 10, right? But they're still behind having to claw through the play-in to qualify for the playoffs. Where every team that he mentioned made the playoffs outright. Denver, the defending champions, they did not they failed to repeat, but nonetheless they're not gonna fall off. They can tweak their roster for moving forward. The Timberwolves, who just went to the Western Conference Finals, and the Thunder, who gave Dallas all they can handle as number one seed before losing in 6 games. But they have so many assets, they can improve that team tremendously. And then the Mavs, who are in the NBA Finals as we speak. The Pelicans were like a 4th, 5th seed prior to Brandon Ingram injuring his leg and missed about 11, 12 games. That's what hurt them. That's the only reason the Pelicans had to advance through the play-in to get to the playoffs. And then Zion Williamson got hurt. So when they made the playoffs, Zion was unable to play. He has yet to compete in the playoffs. If he had been healthy, this team could have made a run by now. So you made all these changes. You got 2 superstars on this team, but you're behind the rest of the field. Even with the moves you made last year midseason, they gave the impression that the young players they brought in, and they're really like Like, they're not like 19, 20 years old starting off like the real young core. They like 23, 24. So they've matured. So who they are is who they are. So what I'm saying is the league scouted them and they've adjusted to those players. So they're right back at square one. And that's why he uttered that plea. In other words, when you read between the lines, what's really being said is we shouldn't let that young core go. That's really what's being said right there. That's how important, that's how talented that young core was. Because best believe, if they successfully brought players up in here who was as talented or more talented, they would have to overhaul the roster every year. But when you get rid of players who are only 2 years into their career, you're not even giving yourself a chance. You know that you're sacrificing your future when you do that. It's impossible not to conclude that. So what's happening is, as I said, the team is now forced to operate backwards. That's why they have to continue to mortgage off more of the future that they really don't have to bring in players to compete in this league. Whereas if you build the natural way, if you need to make a move, it's not going to compromise your future. You're building towards the point, like what Boston Celtics are doing, like what Milwaukee Bucks did a couple years ago, reaching the championship. What all them teams in the West are doing right now. You got teams in the Eastern Conference who will improve: Orlando Magic, Indiana Pacers, New York Knicks, Cleveland Cavaliers, and there's always a surprise team that you don't see. Is going to break through. So what I'm saying is, in closing, I'm going to read this one more time. I really like the philosophical shift that hiring Dan Hurley will represent for the Lakers. Understanding that the CBA makes it difficult to keep a top-tier team together, sustained success will require a pipeline of young talent coming in that has to be prioritized and developed. But see, that statement is true, but it still doesn't recognize the original young core. See, what that's saying is a mistake was made without saying and recognizing the mistake that was made. See, so what I'm saying is this. Everything's coming full circle, and it's like Back to the Future. We were so far ahead of the curve to where because the new CBA was brought forth as to address all the nefarious activities that have been going on over the past 15 years to try to gain unfair advantage to winning championships that set franchises back years, that devalue competition, that devalue young talent, that devalue role players, that devalue what it means to be a superstar, that devalue coaching. So when you read the statement, it's deep. I really like the philosophical shift that hiring Dan Hurley will represent for the Lakers, because if he accepts the job, the coach of the Connecticut Huskies, the men's UConn team, well, that's what he's coming in for. Well, we already had the young coach in Luke Walton, but at the time that young coach was 19, 20 years old. On average. Brandon Ingram technically was drafted at 18, and then he turned 19 before his rookie season started. Zubac was 18. Julius Randle was 19. Lonzo Ball was 19. And then Kuzma was like 21, 22. Josh Hart was 22. So that was the youngest team in the league, and we expected them to win right out the gate. We had all the talent in the world. That's why I say, if we had just continued staying the course, well, the new CBA wouldn't have had no impact on us at all, because we would have our draft picks, and I'm not saying we could keep everybody we drafted over that 4-year period. That was like 14 players. I'm not saying that, but we could have kept 80%, 85%. And then after they mature and emerge as players, then you continually drafting young talent. It's not going to compromise your cap space at all. You'll be able to appropriate your cap according to the true performance of your players. To where all the team needed, based on the natural progression, was one superstar. That's it. You didn't need no 2 superstars, no 3 superstars. See, but that's why I say, when you look at these teams now, you can tell they have a long-term view of things. OKC was trading away their top players, bringing in the draft picks. The so-called experts thought they was crazy. Well, I'm sitting looking like, I said, man, this dude, he about to checkmate everybody. Man, they can bolster that lineup. OKC, man, they gonna have about a 12, 15-year run. That could have been the Lakers. That's my whole point. Instead of just scrambling, talking about, oh man, we need you bring in a roster and it don't work out, and you trade them away. That's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. No. So in closing, the point is proven. The young core collectively is more important than even the 2 superstars on the team. Now let's say, when the Lakers built up their team in the 90s, they started with a foundation of players, right? They got them to point A to point B. They brought in Kobe Bean and Derek Fisher in 96 to continue the evolution of the team. Shaq was like, really, man, that was like, how can I explain? The stars lined up for that to happen. It was circumstance that led to that. But the key was Jerry West showed Shaquille O'Neal a workout video of Kobe Bryant, and that's what sealed the deal. Watching the workout video of a young talent, supremely talented individual. That's what sealed the deal. It wasn't no veteran. Because during that time, we didn't bring in we weren't bringing in the mid-90s, we weren't bringing in 12, 13-year veterans. We brought in some young vets like Robert Horry, who was only in the league for about 3-4 years, and Rick Fox. They were like 4-5-year players. Ain't nothing wrong with that. But it was sensible. They kept building until they reached the mountaintop. But this iteration of the Lakers, with this dude on the team, he got them acting backwards. He got them going backwards and scrambling every year. Meanwhile, this is the year where all the young teams, the young driven teams broke through and soundly defeated these veteran-laden teams that's trying to, take the shortcut to win. It's not going to work no more. Man, that day officially ended in 2020. That's when all that was put to rest. And ever since then, it's been teams that's been developing over the past 5-6 years. This breaking through now. So I'm gonna read this one more time and I'll shut it down. I really like the philosophical shift that hiring Dan Hurley would represent for the Lakers. Understanding that the CBA makes it difficult to keep a top-tier team together. Sustained success will require a pipeline of young talent coming in that has to be prioritized and developed. Case closed. In other words, their young core, and if they had built around that, that'd have been a revolutionary act in winning and pursuing championships, where 80-85% of your roster is homegrown talent. And you still got your draft picks coming in, you ain't got to make no big-time trades every year. You set. And that's why I've been so upset about this whole situation, because everything is coming full circle now. Now they're starting to see the light. The lesson to be learned in this: never cast aside your own, because you will miss them eventually down the road. And it's going to be quicker than what you think. So I just want to drop this nugget, man. And until next time, as I always like to say, this is JB for BTB, Behind the Bench.